I was lucky enough to call Jim Lovell, astronaut, played by Tom Hanks in the movie Apollo, one of the Apollos.
Creed.
For Apollo Creed. That's good. I just called NASA. Like one day I was like, why gotta get a hold of Jim Lovell somehow? So I called NASA and left a message somewhere. And then like the Monday after, I got a call back from NASA. And it was like, hi, I'm Nora. You called NASA? You want to talk to Jim? Yes. I would like to talk with Jim Lovell. Human superhero that landed a plane, or landed a ship from space and, when it was blowing up, all this good stuff. So she got me in touch with him. I left a voicemail on his literal physical answering machine in Northern Illinois, and then he called me back. And he does kind of, this isn't like to knock him, but just to designate, it's a Q&A. I sound like this, and he sounds like, hey, Justin, Jim Lovell here. Like he sounded really sharp and kind of like a college football animal. He kind of sounds like Keith Jackson, who did like college football games. So that's really what, April 7th, 2018, I called Jim Lovell. I'll do my voice. This will be Jim Lovell. That's Jim Lovell, just to be real clear. And there was part of it, which I'll leave out, but in the middle, much like he steered the ship that was corroding through the atmosphere back into space, I was having technical problems with my phone. And he was like, it sounds like you got some feedback there. And then he steered me to turn different parts down so that the volume balance was good. Like he really can just do anything. And I guess I don't know why he's not running for office, I guess is what I'm getting at. So this is an interview with Jim Lovell and myself, Justin Kern. Justin, I'll start here. Jim, thanks for talking with me to give me some perspective on on your background, the most famous person in Milwaukee. Well, maybe. My wife's the most famous person ever to come from Milwaukee. And then we both laughed. I did see the story recently where you were able to figure out that the name situation with the crater on the moon that you had named for her. Yeah, that's right. There was a little fragment on the mountain on the near side of the moon that was used in the Apollo flights. Apollo 8, Apollo 10, Apollo 11. And then finally the International Astronomical Union, that has the authority to name things on the moon, did finally accept the name Mount Maryland. What are some memories of your youth in Milwaukee? I really sounded this stupid, and then he really sounded absolutely like the most amazing, impressive person I've ever talked to. I just felt like a dope. What are some of your memories as a youth in Milwaukee? Well, I was in Milwaukee in grade school. Went to grade school at Story School on the west side of Milwaukee. Then to Juneau High School in the early 40s. Was actually in high school during World War II, where I did meet Maryland. And then I went to University of Wisconsin for 2 years, and finally ended up at the Naval Academy in 1948. How did you and Maryland meet? Were you high school sweethearts, right? I lived on 35th Street, between Wells and Wisconsin. It's all changed now. It was Vail. Maryland's father was a guardian in Tripoli Temple on Wisconsin Avenue. So she lived there. We went to Juneau High School. I met her there at Juneau. We used to walk all the way from that part of the city, all the way down to the west side where the school was located. How did you catch her eye? I was a junior at the high school, and there was a prom. You had to invite a junior girl. The school was kind of small. We had only about 80 students, I think. I invited a junior girl, but she found out I wasn't going to the prom as the king, so she dropped me. And we both laughed, because he's an astronaut. I asked her, I didn't have any other girls to invite. She accepted. She didn't know how to dance, and neither did I, so we worked well together on it. Then after that, I started dating her in my remaining time at high school, and she went to Milwaukee State's Teachers College, and I ended up at the Naval Academy. I invited her eventually down there, and then she transferred her grades to George Washington University. Why did your family move to Milwaukee? Well, we moved, this is extremely aggressive. We moved around there in 1939. My father had died. Back then, I just want to be real clear, everyone died. Everyone back then died. We moved there in he was just right over it. Everyone was dead in his life. We moved there in 1939. My father had died and my mother, she got a job with her uncle in Milwaukee. He was a manager running an office. of the Holland Furnace Company at the time. She was the secretary. We'd been in the Lake Forest for about 30 years. My wife, she's from Milwaukee. My mother was in Milwaukee, so we have ties there. Milwaukee is a unique place for me. In my early years, Wisconsin too, not just Milwaukee. As a junior in high school, during the war, I worked on a farm in the Fond du Lac area. I've gone fishing up north in the Flambeau flowage. Up there in northern part of Wisconsin, there's an aviation club associated with the airport where I've donated quite a few of my artifacts. But the people in Milwaukee, I made a lot of friends. This is when he fixes the phone. And then we get back to it. And I had this idea, that he brought, what would an astronaut, you could bring things, you go on a road trip, maybe you bring trinkets, right? Or you buy trinkets. What does an astronaut bring or take? So he set me straight. So what could you see from space? I know it might sound ridiculous, but could you see Milwaukee or Wisconsin in orbit? No. We were too far south for that. I could say I saw Milwaukee, Wisconsin, as far as I did see the Earth itself. I couldn't differentiate Milwaukee from Chicago from Dallas. Did you bring anything from home from Milwaukee into space? I brought a picture of my wife, sure. You were limited to what you could take. Photographs of wives were fine. Was there anything in your upbringing, in your schooling, even the Midwest, that you could say led to your interest and understanding in science and space, of being in the space program? I was very much interested in high school. This was during the war years. We were learning about the B-2 rocket that was happening. I was very much interested in rocket technology, like most of us here. Although I didn't know much about it, I read a pamphlet by a guy named Robert Goddard, who was a professor out in Massachusetts. He wrote an article on the development of liquid fuel rocket engine. You guys in high school, I'm sure, sit around and read pamphlets by Robert Goddard, right? And methods of reaching extreme altitudes with those rockets. Was there a teacher or someone that encouraged you in Milwaukee? I know you're very big on getting young people involved in the sciences and the space program. Oh yes, chemistry teacher. In our senior year, a couple of people were trying to build a little rocket. I feel like it's a different voice now, but just his voice may change. The chemistry teacher helped make us the proper fuel ingredients to make it go. I think it went about as far as 80 feet. All the teachers, the physics teacher was also helpful in aiming me in the right direction. I was interested in spaceflight before I could even spell it, probably, back in those days. What was the emotional feeling at the time? The emotional feeling of going into space? He offers no emotions in here. I made 4 flights into space. 2 Geminis before I made the 2 Apollos. I got quite used to being in zero gravity and looking at the Earth down from the Gemini flights. Finally, with Apollo, we went to the moon just about 50 years ago now. And my final flight was the infamous Apollo 13. How did you keep your head straight on Apollo 13 as things went wrong so quickly? You had to have a positive attitude. If I got into the fetal position and waited for some miracle to happen, I'd still be up there. Okay. Looking through some archives and stories the Milwaukee Journal and Sentinel had done, they gave you a ticker tape parade in Milwaukee when you came back. It was a super busy day, all types of awards. What do you remember about the city on that day? That was quite a day. My family visited in 1966. Mayor Meyer was the mayor. We walked down Wisconsin Avenue. There were fond memories of Milwaukee all day. Of course, when I made my orbital flights in 1970, Mayor Meyer thought I was going to run for office. He essentially turned Jim Lovell off to Milwaukee. He didn't want to see me anymore. Obviously, I wasn't going to run for politics. The city was really helpful. We had all sorts of people coming out for the parade. I went to various schools, to a manufacturing plant involved in the Apollo project, gave a talk that night at a banquet. As a matter of fact, they presented me with a picture of what is now hanging in the airport at Billy Mitchell Field. And I paused because he did not call it General Mitchell Field. He knew Billy Mitchell. Like the guy at the airport, he was like, that's Billy. Anyway. When I think of Milwaukee, you have a city with a long manufacturing history, a long history connected with industry and the sciences. Why do you feel it's so important for young people to get involved in those fields? It's not too early to start looking at what you want to do. By the time you're in high school, you have a pretty good idea of the kind of career you want to follow. Pursue that. This is for you young people. There will be some downturns and some disappointments. But if you continue and persevere, you'll eventually succeed. See, an astronaut right there. It's almost done. The space program always seemed like the best of America to me. It brought people toward a common goal. I'm wondering, do you feel that still has a role nowadays, or something that's missing nowadays that the space program can still bring people together? Oh yeah, the program still has a lot of positive qualities. It also has a great equalizer with other countries. We've been working together with Russia in the space program even though we're at odds in other ways. So what excites you about the space program today, or even some of the private things like SpaceX? Even the commercial aspects, the government aspects, they're working together to accomplish things. They're still trying to figure out what the future is going to be. Don't hold your breath that people are going to be on Mars tomorrow. There are many positive concepts, but going to Mars in 5 to 10 years, going to the moon after 10 years from when President Kennedy said, that was a possibility, sure. But that's only 240,000 miles away. There are aspects and dangers of going to Mars that are not there in going to the moon. So that was an interview with Jim Lovell, Milwaukee hero.